gamers? I haven't done a tier list for this latest format yet with the Labyrinth coming out and stuff like that. The tier list did kind of shift around a little bit, at least. Right when Labyrinth came out, obviously everyone was on Labyrinth. Now it's calmed down a bit. There's still a bunch of Labyrinth everywhere in ladder, but it is a bit more easy to tell what are the best decks in the format. As always, the Elder God tier deck is Penguins, but without further ado, let's get into it. Now, you guys know when I start doing tier lists, I like to start with the best decks because the best decks do kind of dictate what the rest of the format is going to look like and where other decks will rank. So I actually think the best deck in the game right now is Sprite. Now, obviously, there's different variants of Sprite. I think even like a hard-going second Sprite variant is good. Melfi Sprite is super solid. There's just a bunch of Sprite variants right now, and they're all really good. The main reason I think this is actually the best deck in the game is like, whereas yes, Tier Limit is really crazy and just absolutely insane, best grind game in the game right now. The thing about Sprite is it's just dummy consistent. Like, it's stupidly consistent. The fact that you have two generic ways out of your extra deck to summon a monster from your deck and start combos is just crazy. Like, Gigantic and Sprint is just too insane, not to count Elf, which is like just another super crazy card. Another thing about Sprite is people are very much so on Bestial right now, and while Bestial is good, against Sprite, it's really not that amazing. The best you can do with a Bestial against Sprite is maybe like banish a blue that your opponent wanted to summon with their Elf, but like that doesn't happen very often, and it's neither here nor there. So I would say, generally speaking, I think Sprite is actually the best deck in the game, followed closely by Tier Limit. Of course, I think Tier Limit is also like basically the best deck in the game. We'll say second best deck because I do think Sprite is a little bit better just for that extra consistency. But I mean, like, come on. Even with all the hits that we have to tier right now, like, it's still just a super insane deck, insanely powerful, crazy grind game. Snow is so annoying. Snow is a hell of a card. With the limitation on the shufflers also, you notice that tier players are a lot less scared of just milling the opponent's deck with yugioh and Kelback. So that is kind of an issue. It is kind of terrifying. I'm getting pretty sick of facing tier. Not to say it's not a cool deck. It is a very interesting strategy to play against, but at this point it's gone pretty straightforward and it's just kind of really like long-winded. The combos just don't end, you know, the turns just don't end. It takes forever. Sometimes I'll just pull out a game of Tetris while my opponent is comboing off with tier, and I just wait for them to be done with their turn. So I'm definitely kind of sick of this deck. I would like to see maybe like a kit ban at this point or something like that, just to switch things up a bit. But I know Kashtira is supposed to come out probably pretty soon, maybe in 1 or 2 packs, so hopefully that's going to switch things around a little bit. With that being said, let's move on to the other decks here. I think these two are the best decks in the game. Maybe not the only tier 1 decks, but I think they're pretty much a good way of looking at the format right now. So first up, let's do Dinos. Now, I think Dinos are, I think last tier list I put them in playable. I tried them with Bestial, and I've been having decent success with them. I went on a 5-game winning streak in Master Rank with Dinos today just to test them out a little bit more to make sure I know what I'm talking about. I'm not willing to put them up here just because they're still very inconsistent and fragile, but I do think people should check out my Dino Bestial deck list on the channel if you guys want to play Dinos in this format. I actually think with the Bestials, Dinos are a lot better. Of course, like, it can kind of break your hands, but the thing that's really cool about it is on your typical hand where you'd be like stuck on just like Archosaur doing like a pill pass, well, you can actually banish your Archosaur with a Bestial to get some more bodies on the field to maybe at least make like an IP Masquerena on top of that. Also, like, Elf is really, really good in Dinos, so I actually don't think they're that bad. I'm still going to put them in Rogue, but I think they're going to be like a high Rogue deck. I almost put them in tier 3, but I think that might be a little bit copium, so we're going to put Dinos in Rogue, but I do think they're actually quite playable in this format thanks to the Bestial cards. Next up, let's do Sword Soul. So I think Sword Soul is starting to get like really heavily power crept. Not to say it's a bad deck or anything, and you can definitely win games and like do a pretty decent climb up the ladder with it, but I think like other decks are just way more explosive than Sword Soul for the most part. Not to say like Sword Soul can't have like a crazy combo or anything like that. It's just oftentimes it feels a bit too fair compared to what a lot of other decks are doing. Protoss is a hard carry for the deck, I would say. The fact that Protoss is there does kind of help them a lot, especially since Protoss is really good right now. So I don't know, I'm kind of like teetering between tier 3 and tier 2. I'm gonna put them in tier 2, I guess. I'm gonna put them in tier 3. I'm gonna put them in tier 3. They're not amazing. They're still like a really strong deck, and I do think you can get to Master 1 with them. I just think it's gonna be a bit more of a difficult climb. Also, hand traps don't have as much of an impact as they used to in the game, so having a deck with a bunch of hand traps, like, that's great for like past formats. For this format, it's starting to be a little iffy. Also, Labyrinth is just crazy against Sword Soul. Like, I don't know how much Sword Soul can actually do against Labyrinth going second, and even going first, I feel like Sword Soul would struggle to keep up with Labyrinth. Like, Protoss is a hell of a card, don't get me wrong. But like, what do? They set up Protos going first. You normal summon, you know, like your Ariana. You search your stuff. You set your cards. You pass turn. They have like one negate for your trap cards, and the rest of the stuff just goes through. So I definitely think Sword Soul is not in the best spot right now. I'm gonna put it in tier 3. Let's do heroes. I think heroes are still like a really high rogue deck. I definitely think they're a bit better than dinos. While I do think dinos are a bit better at like being a hybrid of going first and second, where like they set up a better board going first, and they also like have really insane turns going second. I think just the extra consistency that heroes have with all their search cards and stuff like that just makes them better than dinos in general, even though they're both like really cool decks. And I think both of these decks are very solid and super playable right now. I definitely think you have a better chance with heroes, and I could see heroes being tier 3 even. So I'm going to put heroes at the top of rogue for now. Might have one more deck that's going to go above them, but we'll get to that later. Let's do, oh man, let's do Math Mech. So Math Mech, like, dude, the bestials are just so strong against Math Mech. Just all the graveyard hate stuff. Like, I'd be inclined to put them in low rogue, but I even feel like playable is like almost fitting for them. It's just that usually we reserve this spot for like really, really shitty decks. So I don't know if I'm down to put Math Mech here, so I'll put them like low rogue. But man, playing Math Mech right now is so rough. Like, shout out to people who are playing Math Mech. I know it's still doable, but man, not really the format to be playing Math Mech. Rikas and Avalon. Rikas and Avalon, very strong combo deck. I don't think this is really the best combo deck in the game right now, but the fact that it doesn't really care about Bestial is really nice because Bestials are everywhere. So I think it would be fair to maybe put like Rikas and Avalon, maybe like a low tier 2. We'll get back to tier 2 a bit later, but I think it's definitely a fair spot for Rikas and Avalon. Obviously, they combo off like crazy. They have good consistency and a bunch of starters. Going second is kind of rough for them, so I don't want to put them too high in tier 2. I think there's better decks in tier 2. So maybe they'll be like the bottom of tier 2 or something like that. Let's do what I think is actually a really strong combo deck right now, and definitely I think right now better than Rikas and Avalon. Vernu Adamancipators. So yeah, another like earth-based deck. This one is rocks instead of plants, and I definitely think Vernu Adamancipator is kind of crazy right now. They're basically a stun deck at the moment. Like, they're a combo stun deck because they combo off and they end their combo by like searching the barrier statue with the block dragon, and they set up a raw 10, and then they summon the barrier statue. And on your turn, when you try to go to battle phase to beat over the barrier statue, Raw 10 gets to pop a card at the start of the battle phase. So that makes it kind of impossible to go beat over it unless you already have like Earth special summons in your deck to be able to put up more than one body on the field. But the thing is, even if you had that, they have so many negates up by then that it's like your odds of being able to play through their negates and set up a monster to go beat over the barrier statue and then keep playing after are super low. So going first, Adamancipators is absolutely just crazy insane, and the Vernus give it a lot of extra gas, even though they do kind of like lose card advantage. If they get ashed, they can get ashed pretty hard, so it does depend, but generally speaking, I think Adamancipators is just insane right now. And going second, they have a good amount of gas too, depending on what they're playing against. They usually can actually kind of like keep pushing, so I definitely think Adamancipators is in a really, really good spot right now. Definitely like a high tier 2 deck. Definitely can't sleep on this one. Oh yeah, let's do like Branded Bestials. I think Branded Bestials is tier 1 still. Some people might think that this deck went down a little bit, but I don't really agree. This deck is still super crazy. You can mix it with Tearlaments if you want to. You can easily summon the new Dark World boss monster. This deck just keeps getting better and better, honestly. Like, it's just sticking to the tier 1 like it's nothing. It's insane. Not much else to say on this one. Like, Cartesia is a hell of a card. It's still there. It's still great. Next up, let's do Floowandereeze. So I think Floowandereeze is still playable, but it definitely feels like it's actually starting to get a lot worse. And I think Floowandereeze really needs to go first. I think going second, Floowandereeze is just not good enough. It's just not cutting it. And also with Labyrinth around, even if they get to go first, they won't always necessarily have what they need to just like get rid of what the opponent's doing. So I definitely think they definitely took a big hit. I think tier 3 at best. They're still like really solid going first, and they can definitely set up some stuff where it's like kind of hard to play through. It depends what they're playing against as well. But generally speaking, I don't think they're amazing. Also, Tearlament doesn't have the worst matchup against Floowandereeze, generally speaking. But the fact that they can play Dimensional Shifter, stuff like that, is still free wins for the most part against a lot of decks. Not really against Sprite, and that is one of the big reasons that I don't think Floowandereeze is really doing that amazing right now. We were talking about Labyrinth. We might as well do Labyrinth. So, Labyrinth, I was actually teetering on putting in tier 1 because we see it so much in Master Rank, and it's a really, really strong deck The one reason I'm kind of teetering towards putting maybe like at the top of tier 2, they don't have a great going second turn. Now they can do some solid things going second, don't get me wrong. With the Coup Clock and the Chandelier, you can definitely set up some stuff and interrupt your opponent on their turn, but that is a 2-card combo that you need to have in your hand when you're going second. Now that is facilitated by the fact that Max C is in the game, so I still think Labyrinth is super strong going second in the right conditions. It's just like sometimes it really is not good enough compared to the best decks in the game. So I feel like it's a little bit of a coin flip deck, not entirely, just a bit too much for me to feel comfortable putting it in tier 1 right now. It's still really close, like teetering on tier 1 for me, because it's such a solid deck and can definitely carry you to Master 1 if you know what you're doing with the deck. So definitely don't sleep on Labyrinth. I think it's a crazy strategy right now. Not exactly sure if it's fair to put it in tier 1 just because it doesn't have the best turn 2, and like it is a best of 1 format. You know, we're talking about ladder rankings here. I'm not talking about tournament rankings or anything like that. We are talking strictly about ladder format, and I think in ladder format, top of tier 2 is fair for Labyrinth. Next up, let's do, for higher Runic is definitely like high tier 2. Honestly, I think this is probably the best variant of Runic. You can also play with Sprite. I've seen some like for hire Sprite Runic decks. And yeah, for hire is just a crazy engine. Just the Runic plus for hire engine being able to generate a bunch of advantage is really crazy. Can be kind of tough to play through for decks like Labyrinth also, because, you know, you'll just like pop back row and then pop more cards with this engine, the for hire engine. It just gets really tough to play through. Also, it's just insanely explosive, builds a bunch of advantage, draws a bunch of cards, and when you mix it with Sprite cards on top of it, then you have some extra interruptions too. So it's definitely a very, very terrifying deck to play against. I definitely got kind of pilled on this deck. I think this deck is super crazy. And while we're talking about Runic variants, I don't like doing this. Natria Runic is not as good anymore. Like, I just don't think it's as good as the for hire variant, even though I still love Natria Runic, and I think Natria Runic is probably top of tier 3, teetering on tier 2. It just feels like it's not the right format for it. Sure, it's really cool when you can go first, and, you know, with your Runic cards, you realize that your opponent is playing Labyrinth, and you can set up a Barkion, and that's awesome, super epic, right? But they still kind of have a hard time, like, beating Labyrinth going second, and I see a lot of Labyrinth doing, like, really explosive plays. I feel like a deck like this lend itself really well to a format like tier format, because, you know, we would get into a grind game, and in the grind game, those Runic cards are absolutely insane. You really don't want to get into a grind game with Runic. But the thing about Natria Runic right now is you do kind of have to contend with super explosive strategies like Adamanticators, like Labyrinth, that will just do insane plays going first, and then you're kind of left in the dust. So for a best of 1 format, you know, you don't really know what to expect, and it's kind of hard because there's so much variety to really like have some good hate prepared. And the bestial cards are also not as impactful right now, just because, well, while it does hurt Labyrinth to a like small extent, the bestial cards are not that good against Labyrinth, and the same goes for Sprite, and these two decks are very popular right now. So generally speaking, even though I love Natria Runic, I don't think it's in the best place right now. Next up, I mean, we might as well do this right now, so we already know. Blue Eyes, Dark Magician, sorry, if you like those decks, not the best. Honestly, like, low-key, Blue Eyes might be here just because of that insane, like, going second Blue Eyes deck with that flash spell that just summons 3 Blue Eyes and goes for game. Like, low-key, like, that Numeron wannabe Blue Eyes is pretty playable, but I don't think it's good enough to be called Rogue. But, like, it's actually kind of playable. But just generally speaking, like, I mean, I don't think I need to say too much about Blue Eyes and Dark Magician. They're just not amazing, right? This is just a worse version of Branded, and this is just a worse version of Dragons. Speaking of Dragons, though, Dragon Link is also still up here. I actually think, yeah. I think it's a little better than Branded Bestial. I think Dragon Link is just crazy right now. The Bestial cards are extenders, they're interrupters, they're great hand traps. They're just insane in Dragon Link. Dragon Link is just in a really insanely good spot right now. Also, Borland is a hell of a card. Really hard to contend with for a lot of decks. A lot of people have to put a good amount of resources into outing the Borland. So if you can set up a couple of negates, a Branded Beast, plus a Borland, you're usually doing pretty damn good for yourself. I think overall, you can't really sleep on this deck. It's also got a lot of gas for going second. So it's good at going first, good at going second. It's a super strong combo deck, but if you get your stuff interrupted, you can play through a lot of interruptions, and you can switch to a more like control playstyle with the deck now, thanks to the bestial cards. So the fact that you can now like just go from like a combo deck to a control strategy like randomly in the middle of your turn is really, really good for the deck. And thanks to the bestial cards, you also can like not care as much about max C, as you can just kind of go like, okay, they max seed, I'm just gonna set up like Branded Beast and play like bestial control for a bit, you know? So I definitely think Dragon Link think is in an insanely good spot right now. I think it's a super, super strong deck. Definitely tier 1, in my opinion. Let's do Exo Sisters. I think Exo Sisters is in a similar place as Floowandereeze. I don't think... Oh, by the way, I do think... Sword Soul's a little bit better than these two. I don't think like these anti-meta decks are quite as good right now with Labyrinth going around. Like going D-Shifter is not really like a free game win all the time anymore. And other than that, it's just not that explosive of a deck. Of course, like the banishing and stuff is really good. And I've actually seen someone play a hard going second version of Exo Sister that was really solid, but you can also just play hard going second Sprite, and that's also like significantly better. So definitely don't want to like say it's a bad deck or anything. We're gonna leave it in tier 3 around Floowandereeze level. Okay, here's an interesting one. Punk. I think Punk is actually crazy. Like, I almost want to put it above Adamanticators. I've been seeing a lot of Punk Bestial stuff. Yeah, I'm going to put it above Adamanticators. So I've been seeing some Punk mixed with Bestial. I've seen some Punk mixed with Tearlaments. Punk is just a really, really crazy engine. Chaos Ruler is a hell of a card, and Punk literally just reads Summon Chaos Ruler. So the fact that you can summon Chaos Ruler so consistently is super crazy. Everything else it does is also really good. Like that field spell is insane. It gets to draw 2 pretty much every turn, so it's like infinite Pot of Greeds. It's really, really dumb. I mean, Pep is actually in a really good place in the current format. It's kind of hard to like out the Psychic End Punisher. So just generally speaking, I think there's a lot of things going for Punk, and the fact that Punk can be mixed into so many different really solid strategies just makes it so I really can't say that Punk is not amazing. It's really, really great, especially mixed with the bestial stuff. It gives them so much extra gas. They can summon so many interruptions, and they're just in a good place. I think Punk is really solid. High tier 2 deck in my opinion. Next up we can do Stun. I think Stun is goofy, ooey poopy. I'm just gonna put it in Rogue. I mean, I don't want to talk about this deck too much, but yeah, I mean, I guess it's playable. You don't really see it in Master Rank, but I guess you could. Next up, let's do Trap Tricks. I think Trap Tricks is also tier 2, just like Labyrinth, but I don't think it's as good as Labyrinth. Maybe it's like better than Rikas and Avalon though. I think we can put Trap Tricks like at the bottom of tier 2, but I don't think going second they have that great of a turn. Although to be fair, if they have a lot of trap cards, they can just kind of set their traps like past turn and just like kind of hope that their traps carry. So it really depends on what they have. But just from what I've seen from Trap Tricks, it is like a really solid strategy. Definitely nothing to sleep on. The extra deck monsters can be kind of hard to out. They also have a pretty easy way of getting to game. So, you know, if you can't like deal with their board when you're going second against them and kind of out their stuff, turn 3, they're usually going to close out the game pretty easily. So you don't really have to get into a grind game with Trap Tricks. They're just going to kind of end it, right? So can't really sleep on Trap Tricks. Definitely a very, very solid strategy. The fact that Labyrinth can actually play on turn 0, which by that, when I say turn 0, by the way, I just mean like when they're going second, they can actually play on your turn while you're going first, whereas Trap Tricks doesn't really do that. So I think that really gives an edge in a best of 1 format. So that's why I would say like Labyrinth is quite a bit better than Trap Tricks, but both of the decks are really, really good. All right, just a few decks left here. So let's do Dark World. I think Dark World is like the rogue defender now. It's like the gatekeeper of rogue. Dark World is crazy. It does have a couple issues though. It has consistency issues. It hard loses to Max C unless you want to try to go for the Max C challenge and try to deck out your opponent, which I don't think is like a really like great strategy most of the time. It really depends on what your opponent is playing. You might get like shit on by just some really strong hand traps, and then you ended up giving your opponent a bunch of draws. So generally speaking, I think they just kind of lose to Max C challenge. Thankfully, they don't really lose to Bestials, but they do enable Bestials a lot. So Bestials can definitely like gain a lot of advantage from the opponent playing Dark World, even though Dark World still gets their effects and stuff, so it's not the end of the world if they get Bestialed on. So they still have some good things going for them. I just don't think they're quite good enough and consistent enough to get up here. They're kind of a gambly deck. Your end board kind of depends on how lucky you get with your draws and your discards and stuff like that. So yeah, generally speaking, I don't think it's that amazing. Idolok is really strong, of course, so you know you can't really sleep on them, but I just don't think they're that good. Next up, we'll do Generators. I also think Generators is kind of just a rogue deck. Probably, like, honestly, yeah, probably better than Dinos, I guess. Yeah, we can put them above Dinos. Generator is really strong. I actually tried, like, a Dino Generator list, and it was pretty good. I got, like, on a 3-game win streak at Master Rank, but then I got, like, greedy, wanted to get more wins to make a video on it, and I ended up taking a bunch of losses. So Dino Generator is, like, really inconsistent, but Generator as a deck is really strong, and in a best of 1 format, it's kind of hard to prepare for. So, like, you can definitely take your opponent by surprise. wise, and it's not a matchup people are really used to. Also, the new boss monster for this deck is just super crazy. That removal is insane against tier limit, especially. Like, that kind of removal just shuts down their fusions on top of getting you advantage. So it's just crazy. I definitely think that new boss monster helped them a lot, as well as the release of Vala, the level 9 monster that you can discard a generator to summon it and then summon a generator from your grave. Like, that card is super amazing. So definitely I think generator is a super solid strategy right now, just not like up here, but I think it's a good rogue deck, and I definitely think you could get to Master 1 with it if you put in the effort and just like took the time to actually do it. And we'll end it with a deck I don't think is very good right now. Sky Striker is goofy. The best Sky Striker list I saw so far in Master Rank was a guy running like Dimensional Fissure with the Sky Strikers. So basically Dimensional Fissure reads that monsters get banished, but their spells and traps would still get to the grave. So they could get their advantage from like Sky Striker spells while also like having this really strong floodgate against a lot of meta decks right now. The thing is, Dimensional Fissure is not that good right now, and if you're playing like regular Sky Striker, they still like kind of hard lose to like Bestials just because you lose your Ray, and it's kind of like just inconsistent deck in general compared to a lot of other strategies. Even though they have insane searches and shit like that, they kind of have to go second to get guaranteed access to their engage. So then other than that, you just kind of have to hope you draw into it or something like that. Not to mention that Labyrinth can just declare spells against Sky Strikers and just like flat out just demolish the game. So that's kind of scary. I definitely don't think Sky Striker is in the best spot right now. Not that it's like a terrible deck or anything, but I don't know. I don't even think it's rogue, to be honest with you. And that's going to do it for the tier list. So let me know you guys' thoughts. Let me know if you think I'm capping, if I'm crazy, which picks are questionable, which picks are decent. I think the tier list looks pretty good, but I do think like with a format that's this varied, it's kind of hard to really pin it down. So I definitely want to know you guys' thoughts in the comments, and thank you for checking out the video. That's going to be it from me though. And yeah, peace.